was taken up by Arnie Kalakis from Pittston Oil Company. And Charlie said, yeah, he had a dream like that last night when he looked out the window. He saw a whale swallowing an eagle. Resolution number 1. Whereas Maine workers are continually exposed to hazardous and potential hazardous materials within their work environments, and whereas Maine workers need a better understanding in both directing and dealing with the health hazards found in our state's industries, and whereas the cost of health care in Maine has risen from an estimated $300 million in 1970 to more than $1 billion in 1981, and whereas the Workers' Compensation Act, which fails to properly address occupational diseases, is now under serious attack, therefore be it resolved that the Maine AFL-CIO strongly support action in these areas by promoting and maintaining membership in the Maine Labor Group on Health Incorporated. Submitted by Local 1069, United Paper Workers International Union, William Carver, President.
Resolution number 1 is referred to the Resolution Committee.
Resolution number 2. Whereas Solidarity Day was an historic day in which labor and its allies came together to protest the budget cutting and pro-big business policies of the Reagan administration, and whereas in order for an effective struggle to be waged against these policies, an ongoing fight back which is led by the trade union movement must take place, be it resolved that the Maine State AFL-CIO and its affiliated labor councils and locals work to build such a movement. And be it further resolved that the Maine State AFL-CIO, its affiliated labor councils, and its locals work with community groups, churches, and labor and other organizations in building this fight back. Submitted by Local 667, Amalgamated Clothing and Textile Workers Union, Portland, Maine.
Resolution number 2 is referred to the Committee on Resolutions.
Whereas the primary purpose of the Maine AFL-CIO is to promote legislation that is favorable and to oppose that which is harmful to workers at the Maine legislature, and whereas in order to secure that objective, friends of working people must be elected to the Maine Senate and Maine House of Representatives, and whereas the Maine AFL-CIO must have money to effectively support its endorsed candidates in their election campaigns, and whereas National Cope provides financial assistance to the Maine AFL-CIO in support of endorsed candidates for federal office, but not for the state legislature, therefore be it resolved that this convention authorize the Maine AFL-CIO to issue a special appeal to local unions to contribute money to a Maine AFL-CIO political fund for endorsed legislative candidates, in order that the organized labor will be able to be an even more influential factor in the 1982 election than it was in the 1980 election. Submitted by the Executive Board.
Resolution number 3 is referred to the Resolutions Committee.
Resolution number 4, whereas the legislative gains beneficial to working people made in recent years were under heavy assault during the 110th legislature, and whereas working people were able to hold on to those gains because of support for organized labor's legislative program in the Maine House of Representatives, and whereas the Maine Workers' Compensation Law was only preserved due to the grassroots lobbying of union members, and whereas the Maine AFL-CIO promoted an alternative to the escalating cost of workers' compensation by supporting the establishment of a state workers' compensation insurance fund in place of reduction of benefits and weakening of the law, therefore be it resolved that the Maine AFL-CIO reaffirm its support for the enactment of a state workers' compensation insurance fund, and be it further resolved that the Maine AFL-CIO reaffirm its determination to implement progressive legislative changes that would benefit Maine working people. Submitted by the Executive Board.
Resolution number 4 is referred to the Resolutions Committee.
Resolution number 5, whereas the Professional Air Traffic Controllers Organization, PATCO, has been on strike and has been the victim of the union-busting attitude of the Reagan administration, and whereas this approach by the administration to the air traffic controls threatens not only all public employees who do not have the legal right to strike, but also reveals the true anti-union attitude of the Reagan administration, and whereas the air traffic controllers and their families are now in dire financial straits and no just resolution seems imminent, and whereas there are 2 PATCO locals in Maine, Local 284 in Bangor and Local 289 in Portland, therefore be it resolved that Maine trade unionists are urged to assist their PATCO brothers in Maine through financial contributions and help in finding part-time jobs. Submitted by the Executive Board.
Resolution number 5 is referred to the Resolutions Committee.
Resolution 6, whereas the members of Portland Typographical Union Local 66 who work at Casco Printing Company at Portland have been on strike since July 29, 1981, And whereas this newly organized group has been steadfast in demanding a union security clause in their contract, and whereas financial assistance and help on the picket lines are desperately needed, therefore be it resolved that the Maine Trade Unionists continue to respond to the appeal for financial assistance for Local 66 made by the Maine AFL-CIO on September 1, 1981, and demonstrate the strength, solidarity, and unity of the trade union movement in Maine. Submitted by the Executive Board.
Resolution number 6 is referred to the Resolutions Committee.
Resolution number 7. Whereas referendum question number 1 on the November ballot is a $33 million economic development bond which includes $15 million for the Portland Port expansion, and whereas this Portland Port expansion is necessary for the proposed expansion of the Bath Iron Works and the creation of 1,000 new jobs, and whereas local number 6, the Industrial Union of Marine and Shipbuilding Workers of America, is the largest local union in the state and for years has been one of the most solid foundation blocks of the Maine AFL-CIO, therefore be it resolved that the Maine AFL-CIO urge all local unions in the state to encourage their members to vote in favor of referendum question number 1, submitted by the Executive Board.
Resolution number 7 is referred to the Resolutions Committee.
This one's right.
I thought it was right here.
They referred it without recommendation. By request. Resolution number 8. Whereas the Airline Pilots Association is coordinating a boycott of New York Air, which has been established by Texas International Airlines as a 100% non-union sister airline of the 85% unionized Texas International, and whereas because of the corporate maneuver, New York Air threatens the jobs and benefits not only of the Texas TXI employees, but also threatens those of union pilots, flight attendants, machinists, reservation clerks, and baggage and ramp workers throughout the entire airline industry. Therefore, be it resolved that the Maine AFL-CIO condemns the anti-union practice of New York Air and urges its members to boycott New York Air. Submitted without recommendation for consideration by the Executive Board.
Resolution number 8 is referred to the Resolutions Committee.
The members of the Union Label Committee will meet briefly at the end of this session at the rear of the hall.
We already did that. Okay. The workshops will begin in approximately 10 minutes. Once again, the political action workshop is in this convention hall, lobbying in the Windjammer room, and the leadership in the breakwater room. The co-op workshop at 4 o'clock will be in the main convention hall. We will now go into recess until the workshops begin at 2. Report of the Credentials Committee. Brother Gorham?
I hope that brother will stop shouting. As of 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon, we had 156 delegates and 4 alternates registered. We don't have the total number of votes added up yet, but we'll be passing out very shortly the sheets indicating the number of votes, the delegates, and the number of votes that they're with. Hold on for a second. The sheets would indicate that the total delegate votes are 24,853. We will have a follow-up report on this later as there are additional registrations at the front desk. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Gorham. Is the Resolutions Committee Arthur Gordon? Arthur? Is Arthur in the room? The chair recognizes Brother George Netto. Brother Netto.
Any way we can turn these mics down, Chick? They're awful nerve-wracking this morning. George Netto, IBEW Local 2327. I'd like to submit this morning a amendment to our Constitution for the delegates here to consider. An amendment to Article 7, Section 1. The present reading reads as follows. Each district shall be allowed 3 representatives on the executive board, each of whom shall be a resident of that district without regard to the members local having jurisdiction in that specific district. I propose the following. Each district shall be allowed 4 representatives on the executive board, each of whom shall be a resident of that district without regard to the members local having jurisdiction in that specific district, sum and substance increasing from 3 to 4.
Thank you, Brother Netto. Do I hear a second to that? Second? By Linda Lamont. As you know, this resolution from the floor, constitutional amendment, will require 2/3 of those 3 members present to be considered by the full body. So at this time, those of you who would be in favor of accepting this resolution, for constitutional amendment for referral to the committee, would you please stand? Obviously, 2/3 being in favor of the constitutional amendment being referred to committee. Committee is referred to the Constitutional Committee. At this time, the chair would call upon Brother Arthur Gordon to give the report of the Resolutions Committee. Brother Gordon. Would the brother take the microphone?
Ray Hinckley, President, Local 57, UPIU. Charlie, could you give us a caucus first? UPIU caucus first. And then we'll come in, we won't bother you the rest of the day.
UPIU would like to have a few minutes to caucus.
Right out in the hall here.
Okay. Go ahead. Well, the convention will stand in recess 10 minutes. Convention will come to order.
As they fall from your oath.
In just a few moments, we're going to ask the chairman of the Resolutions Committee to give us his partial report. And we'll be dealing this morning also with constitutional amendments. The chair would remind the delegates that if you wish to speak on a resolution or a constitutional amendment, if you go to one of the microphones placed around the hall, and if you would give your name and local number, it would be helpful to us. Also, if there are committees or caucuses that sometime during the day would like to meet, the Windjammer room is available to us for the entire convention, so just let us know if you want to convene your group for a period of time, and you can do it up there. At this time, we call upon Brother Arthur Gordon from UPIU Local 1069, the chairman of the Resolutions Committee, to give his report. Brother Gordon.
Brothers and sisters, the Resolution Committee has met and recommends the passage of resolutions 1 through 6. You should, I would suggest, vote on these separately. The chair would assist you with respect to that vote. I'll remain here at the podium should you wish any questions from the Resolutions Committee. And I'll turn the chair back to Brother O'Leary.
Is it the, do you want to read the resolve stat on the...
Would you care to have me read these off to you? You have them before you. I may, if you wish, read the resolve. Very well. I've been advised that it might be more helpful if we read the resolve and recommend the adoption individually, and if that's your desire, I'll proceed. Resolve 1. Whereas Maine workers are continually exposed to hazards and potential hazard materials in their work environments, and whereas workers need a better understanding in both direction and dealing with the health hazards found in the state's industry, and whereas the cost of health care in Maine has risen from an estimate of $300 million in 1970 to more than $1 billion in 1981, and whereas the Workmen's Compensation Act, which fails to properly address occupational disease, is now under serious attack, therefore be it resolved that the Maine AFL-CIO strongly support action in these areas by promoting and maintaining membership in the Maine Labor Group Incorporated, submitted by Local 1069 UPIU. The Resolution Committee reviewed this resolve and recommended its passage. And I will return the podium back to your chair.
You've heard resolution number 1. Is there discussion on this resolution? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Resolution number 1 is adopted. Resolution number 2. Arthur?
Resolution number 2. It had been suggested from here that I read all of these in their entirety. I really see no need of this, and I'll read just the resolve, and we'll expedite this thing a little bit. Resolution number 2. Be it resolved that the Maine AFL-CIO and its affiliate Labor Council and locals work to build such a movement, and be it further resolved that the Maine AFL-CIO, its affiliates and Labor Council, and its local works in the community group, churches, and other organizations in building this fight back. This is pertaining to resolve number 2, Solidarity Day, and again, the chair, with respect to your vote.
You have heard this resolution. Is there any discussion? The recognized delegate, Linda Lamar. Linda?
Good morning. Brother Chairman, fellow delegates, my name is Linda Lamar, delegate from Local 926 of the Amalgamated Clothing and Textile Workers Union of Dover Foxcroft, Maine. Our union sent 46 of our members on a bus to represent us at Solidarity Day in Washington. It was an emotional experience that cannot be described by mere words. Our sister local in Portland submitted this resolution in order to place the Maine AFL-CIO firmly in support of furthering the goals and objectives of Solidarity Day, particularly that we will work to build the coalitions of women's, church groups, and community organizations and others to lead the fight in Maine against the Reagan program and policies. We strongly recommend that the AFL-CIO support this resolution.
Thank you, sister. Is there any further discussion of this resolution? You've heard resolution number 2. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Resolution number 3.
Resolution number 3. Therefore, be it resolved that this convention authorize the Maine AFL-CIO to issue a special appeal to local unions to contribute money to the Maine AFL-CIO political fund and endorse legislative candidates in order that the organized labor will be able to, in an event, in a more influential factor in the 1982 election than it was in the 1980 election. The resolution committee recommends the passage of this resolve.
You've heard resolution number 3. Is there any discussion of this resolution? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Resolution number 3 is passed. Resolution number 4.
Therefore, be it resolved that the Maine AFL-CIO reaffirm its support for the enactment of the State Workmen's Compensation Insurance Fund, and be it further resolved that the Maine AFL-CIO reaffirm its determination to implement progressive legislation changes that will benefit the Maine workers. The resolution committee recommends the adoption of this resolve.
You've heard resolution number 4. Is there discussion of this resolution? All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Resolution number 4 carried. Resolution number 5.
Resolution number 5. Therefore, be it resolved that the Maine trade unionists are urged to assist their Patco brothers in Maine through financial contributions and help in finding part-time jobs. The resolution committee met and recommended this passage.
You've heard resolution number 5. Is there someone that wishes to speak to this question? Chair recognizes the brother.
Mr. Chairman, I respectfully request if I may speak from the podium.
Would the brother step forward, please?
My name is Kenneth Clark, Boilermakers Local 467. Brothers and sisters and fellow delegates, I'd like to make a few statements in regard to this resolution and the term union solidarity. I would like to know whatever happened to the days when unions held together. The days when threats of personal danger and violence were common in our efforts to gain collective gains for American workers. Has it been so long since workers, who at times had nothing but their own collectivism, or to use today's buzzword, solidarity, that we have forgotten what it was like? If in fact some of us have forgotten, have we failed to educate those persons new to the labor movement each year in relation to the past gains and struggles of labor? The days of the yellow dog contracts, the 60 to 80-hour work weeks, child labor, no overtime compensation, no safety and health, no Social Security, no retirement, no food stamps, no welfare programs, no unemployment compensation, and no workers' compensation, and all the other benefits and battles that were fought with the blood of our forefathers in the labor movement. Benefits and gains which are so commonly accepted by some of today's workers as the forever guaranteed rights of American workers. Again, I ask, whatever happened to the saying, or should I say the belief in the saying, that when any part of the hand of labor is cut, the whole hand bleeds? The only time we seem ready to be able to support each other today is when something affects us and unites us as a local, or as a family, or ourselves as individuals. And even when we have gotten together in support of each other, it's not always a result of our own efforts or a belief in unionism and union solidarity because we are a fraternal brotherhood. More often than not, it is because we are engaged as organized labor in a battle today which is being organized against all of us on all fronts, whether it be in the private sector, the public sector, or the federal sector. As was pointed out Wednesday morning, we can't even get together and rally around a common cause such as a co-op program when we are the only ones who have anything to gain. As another case in point, if I may, let me turn to the issue of our striking brothers and sisters of the professional air traffic controllers. How many in this room right now support the plight of the air traffic controllers? Or should I ask, how many think that President Reagan did the right thing? Or that they make too much money? Or that they had no right to go on strike in the first place? These are some of the common attitudes of our union members today. But how many have taken the time to find out the real story about PATCO? Let's look at some of the issues. Money. What is the average salary of an air traffic controller? It's not $50,000 as reported by the press, nor $45,000, nor $40,000, nor even $35,000. The average salary is approximately $30,000. Does this bother us? Yes, you're damn right it does. It shouldn't, but it does. What I don't understand is why we don't accept and congratulate a fellow union brother or sister for making a decent wage, and then ask ourselves why our employer isn't affording us the same standards and benefits, and then do what we got to do to get our employer to give us those standards and benefits and reach what they've already attained. What are the real demands of PATCO? A shorter work week, early retirement, air safety? How much of this have you heard is reported by our press? I don't know if any of you have seen the request or application that went out, announcement that went out from the Office of Personnel Management when our president said that these people had in fact resigned and he was going to rebuild the system. Starting pay was $16,800 a year, and you had to be under 30 years old to be able to apply. Does that give you any idea as to the stress and strains that may be involved in this job? And how many of you know that President Reagan gave a letter in writing to PATCO saying that he supported their demands? PATCO supported Jimmy Carter in the previous election. And as many of you are aware, Jimmy Carter did an about-face on PATCO, as he did on many of us in the labor movement. President Reagan went to PATCO, as he did many of our unions, and asked for support. And PATCO looked at President Reagan, and he spoke at their convention prior to his election, and they said, "We appreciate your comments, but we had a past president who reneged. We want it in writing." And they got it in writing. And he got elected, and he still reneged. How many of you are aware that Drew Lewis, the head of the Transportation Department, was asked 7 times by President Poli to intervene and look into the negotiations between PATCO and the government? And he refused. How many of you are aware that for the first 2 solid months of negotiations with the government, the United States federal government and its representatives never put one single contract proposal on the table? 2 months. And then when PATCO's first strike vote came up, all of a sudden the government put some proposals on the table. And when the deadline passed and they saw that PATCO did not go out, they withdrew them again. All of a sudden another strike deadline came up. And again, the government put some proposals on the table. In fact, they put proposals on the table which directly addressed some of the demands that PATCO was asking for, one being a shorter work week. And at midnight, when PACO left the negotiating room, shortly after midnight, to find out what the strike vote was going to be for that evening, depending on how negotiations went, President Polai returned to the table and found that the proposals that the government had put on the table 2 hours earlier had been totally withdrawn. PACO's made some mistakes, but who hasn't? And where have we been? We, you and me, and the leadership above us. We were the only ones who could have made the difference. We could have brought this administration to its knees. And I'm not saying that all of us haven't tried. In fact, your president, Charlie O'Leary, was one of the first to request help and support on behalf of the striking PACO controllers, and I commend him for that effort. The excuses, there were many. Loss of jobs, potential possibilities of fines, jailing of our leadership, attachment of our monies and funds. I called President Lane Kirkland's office, and I was told that one of the major problems that we have were legalistic. That with all the fines that the courts had assessed against the PACO organization, that if we supported this quote-unquote illegal strike, that we stood a chance of having all our funds in the AFL-CIO and our other unions being attached by the courts and the government. The workers in Poland, at this very moment, are facing tanks and the threat of death in their gains, not only for the union workers in Poland, but for every living person in Poland who deserves to have food, wages, and decent benefits. Yet we were afraid because somebody might take and fine us, or maybe put one of our leaders in jail. It would be easy to stand here and put the blame on our leaders, or this group, or that organization. And even though some may deserve varying degrees of criticism, we are all guilty. To wrap up, let me say this. We can sit and watch a Congress pass resolutions saying that they support the workers of the Polish Solidarity Movement, yet they can't even support the justifiable grievances of our brothers and workers in their own federal government. The question that we have to ask ourselves is this: when are we going to get off our asses and act like true brothers and sisters and start giving our support to each other when it's needed? If I'm on strike, I don't need your help tomorrow. I need it now. The rights and benefits that we have are not forever guaranteed, and make no mistake about it. There is a concentrated effort afloat today, both on the local and the federal level, to take away these benefits. And not only to take away these benefits, but to destroy the entire labor movement as we know it today. The decertification of PACO this past week has brought these 12,000 union members to their knees. And I don't even know if this resolution is going to be of any help at this point in the game. But I do know one thing, that if we don't stand together in action from here on out, and not in just words, we may lose the battle. I'd like to be recorded as a second on this resolution, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Is there any further discussion of resolution number 5? You've heard resolution number 5. All those in favor of this resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Resolution number 5 is passed. Resolution number 6.
Resolution number 6. Therefore be it resolved that the Maine trade unionists continue to respond to the appeal for financial assistance to Local 66 made by the Maine AFL-CIO on September 1st, 1981, and demonstrate the strength, solidarity, and unity of the trade union movement in Maine. The resolution committee urges the passage of this resolve.
You've heard resolution number 6. Is there any discussion of this resolution? All of those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Resolution number 6 passes.
Do you have any? Yeah, I'm just going to make comment. This concludes momentarily the report of the resolution committee. The resolution committee urges any of our brothers and sisters who have resolves to submit them early. We would prefer not to entertain resolves tomorrow. Therefore, if you do have resolves, why, they should be placed upon the floor at your earliest convenience. Thank you.
Right now, and then we have to refer it to your committee.
The chair will recognize Sister Halfkenny.
Thank you. I would like to put a resolution before the convention. Have your permission?
Would you read the resolution, please?
Okay. This is.
Would you identify yourself?
I'm Gail Halfkenny. I'm a delegate from the Portland Central Labor Council. This resolution is as follows. Whereas union women work in nearly every industry in every part of the state, and whereas issues and problems affecting women workers, such as discrimination and unequal pay, cut across local and international lines affecting the entire labor movement, and whereas increased involvement of women workers in their unions would significantly strengthen these unions, and whereas the Coalition of Labor Union Women seeks to increase participation and involvement of women in unions, be it resolved that the Maine AFL-CIO and its affiliated locals support the newly formed Maine chapter of the Coalition of Labor Union Women, this is the Alzina Stevens chapter of CLU, and be it further resolved that locals and individual members be urged to join CLU and participate in CLU activities. I would ask the convention to refer this to the resolution committee.
Do I hear a second to that? It has been moved and seconded that the resolution offered by Sister Halfkenny be referred to the resolutions committee. This requires a 2/3 vote. I would ask the delegations to signify if they are in favor of the resolution to be referred to the resolutions committee to say aye. Aye. Opposed? Obviously, 2/3 vote to refer to the resolutions committee. Resolution number 9. Thank you, Brother Gordon. Brother Hinckley, are you prepared at this time to give the report of the Constitution Committee? Morning, Raymond.
I'm ready. My name is Ray Hinckley. I'm president of Local 57 UPIU, located in Augusta, and I'm chairman of the Constitution Committee. At this time, I'll read the proposed constitutional amendments. And they're short, so I can read them all, and we'll zip right through this. Constitutional Amendment Number 1. Present language reads, and it's Article 1, this organization shall be known as the Maine AFL-CIO. Headquarters for this organization shall be maintained in the city of Bangor and/or such place as the executive board may designate. The fiscal year for this organization shall be January 1 to December 31st. The proposed language change. Delete the last sentence from Article 1. Add the following section to Article 11. Review Section 5. This organization will operate on the basis of a July 1 to June 30 fiscal year. The rationale of this constitutional amendment is the present fiscal year of the Maine AFL-CIO is July to June. This is generally accepted practice and considered sound accounting procedure. This was submitted by the executive board, and we unanimously approve this in the Constitutional Committee, and I so move.
Thank you, Paula. You've heard constitutional amendment number 1. Is there any discussion of this constitutional amendment? All those in favor of constitutional amendment number 1 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Constitutional amendment number 1 passes.
Constitutional Amendment number 2. Article 11, Section 1, subsection B. Present language, 5 cents of the above per capita tax per month shall be used exclusively for the purpose of establishing and maintaining a retirement program for the President of the Maine AFL-CIO, the full-time paid staff of the Maine AFL-CIO, and future full-time paid elected officials and full-time paid staff of the Maine AFL-CIO. Change 2. The Maine AFL-CIO shall maintain a retirement program for full-time paid officials and staff and shall fund such programs as necessary from regular revenue derived from the per capita tax established above. The rationale of this constitutional amendment is the present language mandates that 5 cents per member per month be allocated to this pension fund. The result of this is that the Maine AFL-CIO is paying in more than is required. The insurance carrier is getting the advantage of our accelerated premium payments, and we're deprived of using our own funds as needed. This change will not affect the program itself. The proposed language will assure payment of premiums which are due, not additional amounts which are unnecessary. This was submitted by the Executive Board and approved by the Constitutional Committee, and I so move.
You have heard constitutional amendment number 2. Is there any discussion of this issue? All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Constitutional amendment number 2 passes.
Give Charlie a little more money to play with. Constitutional Amendment number 3. Article 4, Section 6. Present language. A registration fee not less than $15, no more than $25. Proposed language. A registration fee, the amount to be determined by the Executive Board. This delegates specific reference to minimum and maximum dollar amounts. The rationale of this constitutional amendment is there appears, in light of ever-increasing costs, a continuing need to change this figure nearly every 2 years just to reflect reality. A constitution should be more universal in its language, providing details to governing bodies. This was submitted by the Executive Board and approved by the Constitution Committee, and I so move.
You've heard constitutional amendment number 3.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Constitutional amendment number 3 passes.
Constitutional Amendment number 4. Article 8, Section 2 now reads, for this service, he or she shall receive a salary of $26,000 per annum, and his or her regular week's salary for 30 calendar days following election of his or her successor, plus necessary expenses to be set by the Executive Board. Proposed change. Add the following sentence to Section 2. The Executive Board may grant the President annual cost of living increases based on increases in the Consumer Price Index. The rationale of this amendment is, between July 80, the last time that the salary of the President was increased, and August 81, the Consumer Price Index increased 12%. As the Constitution now reads, there is no way the President's salary can be adjusted except by a convention. This proposed amendment would give the Executive Board the authority and flexibility to increase the President's salary based on increases in the Consumer Price Index when the financial condition of the Maine AFL-CIO allows. This was passed by the Executive Board, approved by the Constitutional Committee, and I so move. This is number 4.
You've heard constitutional amendment number 4. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of constitutional amendment number 4 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Constitutional amendment number 4 passes.
Constitutional Amendment number 5. Article 7, Section 1. The first sentence of the second paragraph now reads, each district shall be allowed 3 representatives on the executive board, each of whom shall be a resident of that district without regard to the members local having jurisdiction in the specific district. Change this sentence to read, each district shall be allowed 4 representatives on the executive board, each of whom shall be a resident of that district without regard to the members local having jurisdiction in that specific district. This was submitted by George Nato, IBEW, Local 2327, and I understand it was passed with approval by the Executive Board last night, and it was also passed with unanimous approval of the Constitutional Committee today, and I so move.
Number is that, man?
5. You've heard Constitutional Amendment number 5. Is there any discussion with the Constitutional Amendment? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Constitutional number 5 passes.
At this time, that concludes the constitutional amendments.
Thank you, Brother Hinckley.
Okay. United Farm Workers?
One message. Charlie Sherburne is wanted in the corridor. Charlie, are you here?
Okay.
At this time, I would like to call upon Brother Rob Everett from the United Farm Workers to give us a brief report. Brother Everett, are you in the hall?
Good morning, brothers and sisters. My name is Rob Everett, and I'm the New England Director for the United Farm Workers Union. I'll keep this brief because I know you got a lot of business ahead still today. When I decided to ask to come up and speak here, it was for one particular reason. That was to announce to all of you the beginning of a brand new boycott that the United Farm Workers announced about a month ago against Ralston Purina Corporation. And the reason we started a boycott of Ralston Purina is because part of their empire in California is a huge mushroom company called Steakmate Mushrooms. And the workers had voted for the union. The company didn't want to negotiate. And so 3 months ago in California, they walked out on strike. And within 1 week, the company had a couple of hundred newly arrived immigrants from the Punjab area of India brought in to break the strike. And so what we did is we began a boycott of all Ralston Purina products. Well, my rap is going to change today because 2 days ago I received a phone call from California hearing that the Ralston Purina Corporation had caved in and had signed a very strong contract with the United Farm Workers, covering 300 workers. So that was great news for us. It covers 300 workers in Morgan Hill, California, in the mushrooms, and it's the biggest mushroom company in the state, and the medical plan and wages and everything shot up dramatically. So we're extremely happy about that. But since I'm here, let me give you an update on our status with the Red Coach lettuce boycott that I'm sure most of you are aware of. When I was at the Summer Institute this past August up in Orono, I had mentioned that there was a meeting pending with Cesar Chavez and the Bruce Church Company, the producer of this Red Coach brand iceberg lettuce. And we thought perhaps that they had inclinations to settle with us, but once again we were wrong, and it turned out to be a hoax, and we're no closer to signing with this company than we ever were. Let me back up just a little bit and tell you why, in specific details, why we are boycotting this company. The Bruce Church Lettuce Company is the third largest lettuce grower in the world, and they produce this pre-wrapped iceberg lettuce. It says Red Coach on the label, and they sell a fair amount of it around here. Well, we had a contract with them and almost every other major lettuce grower in California up until January 1st of 1979. And at that time, when every contract expired, the growers took a long hard look at the situation, and they engaged to see if it would be worth it for them to make a run for their money, to destroy the union, to turn back the clock 100 years and try to run things like they used to and take away the gains that we had made with the help of people like yourselves over the past 10 or 15 years. And what they did was provoke a strike which involved 5,000 farm workers. And one of the ways that they attempted to break the strike was, it was really one of the most perverse things we'd ever heard of. They hired on a guy named Bill Roberts, who was had been a campaign director for a couple of Ronald Reagan's gubernatorial campaigns in California. He heads up a right-wing PR group in Los Angeles called the Dolphin Agency. And his job was to come into the Imperial Valley where we were, where the letter strike was going on, and try to provoke our members to violence and get that on public TV and in the newspapers, because they knew that we've relied so heavily on the public for the past 10 or 15 years to make all the gains that we've been able to make. And they figured if they could turn the public against us, then we wouldn't be able to go back to boycott, and we would be defeated. And so he began recruiting young kids. It was, as in many areas of the country over the past several years, race relations in the community, it was whites and Mexican Americans, had improved in that area. Well, it all went down the drain within a couple of weeks there, because what he did was to go into the local elementary schools and junior colleges and colleges and recruit exclusively white children, students, sons, daughters of the growers, to come in and break the strike, hoping that they'd get a nice picture of a Mexican taking a poke at them and get that out across the country. Well, it didn't work, but where that strategy got deadly serious was when they went out to San Diego, which is 2 hours west of where the strike was going on, and began bringing in busloads of students to break the strike. And when they got to San Diego, the Ku Klux Klan, which is very big in San Diego, caught wind of what was going on, and they came out to the Imperial Valley, and they publicly offered to stand by the sides of their white brothers and sisters in the name of patriotism, and to be sure that white Americans across the country wouldn't have to go another day without salads on their dinner tables. They were going to do everything possible to keep the Mexicans out and to break the strike. And with the presence of the Klan in the valley, the violence escalated dramatically. Within, it seemed almost hourly at times, that people were streaming into our office with some kind of injury, whether it was a dog bite or they'd been hit by a car. One brother was knocked down by a sheriff's helicopter and pinned to the ground for about 2.5 minutes, and it destroyed both his legs, and he'll never walk again. And then on the 10th of February of that year, 79, the inevitable did happen, and that was the murder of a striker named Rufino Contreras, who was 28 years old. He had a wife and 2 real small kids. He entered a field with 5 or 6 other workers to attempt to talk to a group of strike breakers, because by this time they had been able to go deep into the interior of Mexico and bring in very poor, hungry, desperate people to break the strike. They were being housed and working on the growers' property. We couldn't communicate with them. So Rufino and a few others went onto the property to talk to him. And at the given signal, 3 company foremen pulled out .38 caliber pistols and began one of the most vicious one-sided shootouts I've ever heard of. The police counted over 180 rounds fired, 180 bullets. And for an hour and 20 minutes, they were firing while his father and his brother, who were on the picket line, were making repeated attempts to go into the field to rescue him, to perhaps save his life and get him to a hospital. But they were kept at bay while these foremen were firing. Well, Rufino bled to death in the field. He never made it to the hospital alive. And then the 3 foremen were arrested on suspicion of murder, and the company bailed them out. 1 month later, they were all released due to insufficient evidence, because they couldn't find the one bullet that went through his head. And they're all walking free today, and it was the green light that once again it was open season on farm workers. And for that reason, we had to begin one more time yet another boycott. We weren't afraid to. We know that times change, but we know our friends are still here, and we have new friends. So we came back to the major cities across the country and began a boycott against the entire lettuce industry. And within 3 or 4 months, we had most of those contracts won. We thought that those of us who are out here on assignment from California, we thought the domino theory would work. We'd knock off the rest of them, go back and continue organizing farm workers, because we're not we're not the United Boycotters of America, although it may seem like that sometime. It's the United Farm Workers, and that's our job. But what we got to do as part of it is indeed boycott products seemingly all the time. Well, most of the growers went, but there's 12 big lettuce companies left, and the leader of the pack is this Bruce Church company. And I don't know what the problem is with them. We have cut the company's production in half. They've lost most major accounts across the country, and a lot of the retailers just won't carry the product anymore. Any normal business-minded, even anti-union grower would have signed by now, because the company perhaps will go down the drain. I think maybe we have to push them to the verge of bankruptcy before they'll sign, but well, we're here to do whatever it takes, and I'm here to make a plea for support to please, when you go into any supermarket in Maine, we've seen the Red Coach brand lettuce in several of the Shop and Save stores, which also come under a variety of other names, Samson's around the corner, and Bud's and Martin's and Cottle's and a few others. They carry a fair amount of this Red Coach lettuce, and some Shaw's supermarkets carry it also. We'd really appreciate it if you go into a store and you do see it, if you could make a point of talking to the manager of the store. They don't have a decision on what brand they carry, but they can pass the word on. But talk to the manager, explain the strike situation, let them know what local you're from, tell them how many members in that community you have, and on behalf of those people that you don't want the Red Coach lettuce contaminating your store anymore, because they try to isolate it, they try to keep it an issue 3,000 miles away, but with your help we can bring it right into the neighborhoods. And if they get the word that people and unions in this town and this area don't want their towns polluted with Red Coach lettuce, we think that sooner or later they'll take it off. And I'm hoping personally that we can send a full-time organizer up here pretty soon to finish off Shop and Save supermarkets and clean them up. So hopefully by next year at this time I'll have a victory report on the Red Coach lettuce. The only other one pitch I would like to make is we always are in need of money, and we have a table out with the other tables in the main hall, and I will be here just till about 1 o'clock today. And for those of you who feel sufficiently inspired, I would strongly encourage you to reach deep into your pockets and please drop a dollar in the can out at the table afterwards during the lunch hour. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here today.
Thank you, Brother Everett. There are so many things that happened in the trade union movement that we wanted to give Brother Everett a chance to tell you about some of the things that we have a tendency to forget that aren't immediately at hand. We thank you for your remarks. Yesterday, in my opening address, I mentioned the work of those in the area of occupational safety and health. And I particularly mentioned at that time the Maine Labor Group on Health and the work of the United Paperworkers International Union and the Maine District Council of Papermakers. At this time, I'd like to call upon Arthur Gordon again to come up and just say just a few words about the activity of the Maine Labor Group on Health. Arthur?
Thank you, Mr. President. Brothers and sisters, I'll be very brief. I'm not going to give a report. I have someone who is going to give a brief report for us on the Maine Labor Group on Health. We know we have a serious problem in this nation pertaining to occupational health. We have a very serious problem in this state. The Maine Times has addressed this problem. It need not be so. We sometimes think that we have the ultimate in this country, and then I don't think so. I look at Sweden, Denmark, Japan, West Germany. They enjoy a better work environment than we do in Maine, and I don't, for one, buy this. The Maine Labor Group on Health has been working for several years, working quite hard. We are going to continue to work. I ask and urge your support in this battle. We've enjoyed the strong support of this body here. I assure you, brothers and sisters, the Reagan administration is not going to help us. We know what's happened to NIOSH and OSHA. We know our limited abilities within this group here. and Charlie certainly has his work cut out for him. So we wish to continue with our work with the Maine Labor Group on Health and complement Charlie's work. I'm going to ask one of our people, Charlie Levitt from the Boilermakers, to submit a brief report to you. And we'll be here for any questions that you might have. Susan Accardi, our project director, will be outside the door at the table. And we hope that you too will join battle with us with respect to occupational health. Charlie Levitt.
Thank you, Arthur. By order of this convention of 1979, our report will be as follows. First, I would like to also add that along with the District Council of Paper Workers and many various UPIU locals in the state, we were also supported by the Tri-City Maine Central Labor Council, the Maine State Building Trades, the Sheet Metal Workers Local 545, the ILGWU, the Maine State Nurses Association, Economic General Welfare Council. In just two areas, our program has been divided. In 1980, we received a federal grant, Department of Labor, for $25,000 for ongoing work under the New Directions program in education and training. The first part of that program was successful. We were refunded again this year against incredible odds for an additional $50,000. That is the work of our grant, and we have to keep that as an entity separate and unto itself. The other part of our program, the Maine Labor Group on Health, prides itself is in its cooperation with the Maine AFL-CIO in its legislative battles in Augusta when it comes to discussing the problems of occupational health, workers' compensation in Augusta. We try to add a segment on the health aspects, whether it be on plant closing and runaway shops or workers' compensation, and I will discuss those two separate programs. The grant itself last year held the first Maine statewide conference on occupational disease in cooperation with the Mid-Maine Medical Center. It was the first time when labor, state officials, and doctors and physicians, healthcare providers throughout the state came together to seriously discuss the occupational disease problems in the state of Maine. We also are developing and working with Dick Grandmason's Local 545 on a screening and hearing conservation educational program. We think it will be very successful. Again, it shows the cooperation of local unions working together with the federal government in order to rectify some of the serious problems we have in audiology. We also have developed a supportive relationship with the Bureau of Health in Augusta, where we have supplied office space, and we work very closely with the newly created Environmental Health Unit. That mostly will sum up our grant activities. As Arthur mentioned, Susan Accardi is here, and she could answer more in depth any questions you might have as to the services available through that grant, and I urge you to use them. We have them there, and we're not sure how long we'll hold on to the federal money. As Arthur also noted, unless we fund it ourselves and keep it supporting, we may not be able to keep these programs going. Last year, the Maine Labor Group on Health also was involved in several LDs that were brought before the Labor Committee. LD 1033, an act to revise the workers' compensation disability payments. LD 491, an act to require the Workers' Compensation Commission to conduct a data systems study. LD 1460, an act concerning attorney's fees under the Workers' Compensation Law. LD 790, an act to provide workers and communities with reasonable notice and compensation upon certain plant closings. LD 513, an act relating to occupational loss of hearing. Just as a note and aside to that, we also presented to the State Occupational Health and Safety Board a measure that would have reduced the DBA standard from 90 decibels to 85 for an 8-hour time-weighted average. We were unsuccessful in getting that change for state employees. However, we were brought together with the Department of Labor and the Bureau of Labor, and we will continue to work in an area of reducing those standards. I think if there's any other important point that we really want to try to get across, we saw the film yesterday on the problems that we face with occupational disease, that the Maine Labor Group on Health is a microcosm of the AFL-CIO. This is a group that comes together with paper workers, shipbuilders, boilermakers, office workers, insurance workers, just as we should be at these conventions. We have our fights. but in fighting and talking about the problems, I think we come out stronger, and I just urge your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Levitt. At this time, I would like to call upon a brother and gentleman who, under the last circumstances we met when we shared a podium, were quite different.